All right, I think it's time we check in on the one guy whom we all know is going to be able to fix all this, if only we give him the chance. The one person who, if only we could bring ourselves to grasp his brilliance, his fantastic judgment, his command of the situation, and his just lifelong career of nothing but good decision making and real intellectual achievement and moral clarity. If only good old Joe Biden could be running the show right now, we would be in a much better place, and we would certainly be having much better economic intercourse. Play clip one.
I would get much more engaged in the world. We can't step back. If, in fact, for example, we solve the problem in the United States of America and you don't solve it in other parts of the world, you know what's going to happen. You're going to have travel bans. You're going to not be able to have economic intercourse around the world. There's a lot. Look, when America goes alone, when America is first, it's America alone. And the idea that I would get much more engaged in the world. We can't step back.
Yeah. You got to be more engaged. You got to be real close, very hands-on for your economic intercourse. It's it's an important thing. I know. You could say, oh, well, what are the full scope of definitions and terms that one could use for intercourse? But yep, there you go, Joe Biden. Everybody, you can't step back. You need that economic intercourse. You need it to be consistent. You need it to be, you need it to be reliable. And you need it to, all right, I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to get myself into trouble. Yep, that's Joe Biden for you. This guy can't go a day speaking from his basement without, one, looking like an eighth grader reading off of note cards like he's running for class president. Two, saying something that everyone goes, huh? And then three, at some point, just breaking down into some kind of blather. Just and all the Democrats go, yeah, he's a genius. He's amazing. He's so much better than Trump. We all sit here saying to ourselves, why are we supposed to believe that exactly? Why are we supposed to think that he's such a great choice? I'm still waiting for that answer. As we talked to my friend Sagar and Jetty about, he's getting an endorsement today from Hillary Clinton. Remember, they picked Hillary over him. Hillary was the choice of the Democratic Party after Joe Biden had been vice president for 8 years. It's because everybody knew that Joe Biden was kind of a mediocre guy, but, he was fine for being Obama's unimportant vice president, right? As in the background as a vice president can really be. And he doesn't have good answers for a whole lot of things. Like when he's asked about Hunter Biden's business dealings in China. Remember, Hunter Biden got over $1 billion for a fund. I mean, Hunter Biden can't even be trusted to use a prophylactic when he's in the champagne lounge with an exotic dancer while he's a married guy. I mean, Hunter Biden's got big problems of judgment. You're going to give this guy $1 billion? Maybe if his dad's vice president and you're trying to influence U.S. foreign policy, you will. But when Joe Biden is asked about this, here's what he says. Play 6.
And are you vulnerable on this issue at all because of your son's business dealings in China?
No, I don't believe so at all. My son's business dealings were not anything with everybody that he's talking about, not even remotely, number one. Nothing to do with me, number two. And to talk about business dealings, look at the business dealings the president has with China. He owes apparently millions of dollars to the Bank of China. He's got patents from, this is all about whether or not we're going to be able to coexist with the biggest population in the world and make sure we're the ones that set the standards that the rest of the world repairs to. That's what it's about. And it's about dealing straight up and straightforwardly with China.
There's so much that he said there that's just not true. I also love the business dealings that Hunter Biden has nothing to do with Joe Biden. Is there a human being with an IQ over 30? Is there a human being with an IQ beyond a chia pet that really believes that Hunter Biden was getting these positions and this money for any reason other than who his dad was? The answer is no. Not even Hunter Biden makes that case. Hunter Biden's like, yeah, I mean, I probably got the position because my dad's vice president. These are foreign companies, foreign countries that are trying to curry influence, trying to buy a little favor. I mean, yeah, it probably is it. That's probably what happened. I mean, we're going to be honest, that's probably what. Okay, well, thank you. I'm glad we've established that. But, Joe Biden still pretends that that's not true. Oh, I also really want to play for you the response that Joe Biden had when he was pushed on the allegations of sexual assault against him by Tara Reade, a Senate staffer who worked for him, who now has contemporaneous corroboration of really good. Oh, wait, no, there's no audio because no one asked him that question. How can you consider yourself a journalist right now and have access to the Democrat nominee for the presidency who has been credibly accused by a woman on the record who does have a story that lines up, not a single fact has been wrong or off so far? How can you, and by the way, don't even get me into how the other standard that they set up against Kavanaugh and against Trump was any crazy person who says any crazy thing, it gets treated like gospel as long as it bashes the right target. But how could you have a person who, how could you be a journalist and not ask the question when you have access to Joe Biden on this? I just wonder. I feel like there's no answer unless you're a partisan hack, unless you cannot be trusted and you're somebody who was never really about doing this job of journalism, but you're really just an activist. So that means every person who talks to Joe Biden right now, interviews him as a journalist, is a fake. Or I need a better explanation. Or someone can try to tell me what the better explanation may be. I haven't even heard them try yet. No, instead what they're doing is all lining up to try and get a piece of the Joe Biden Express here. Kamala Harris, who, if you recall, made her biggest move in the Democrat primary was to more or less call Joe Biden a racist on national TV. That's what she did. Oh, yeah. I remember that. And it had to do with busing. And then I did a whole breakdown on this show of how busing is a more complicated issue than you are led to believe by the media. And if you don't think that's true, just go back and look at the studies done and read the testimony of kids, including young black kids who didn't want to get bused all the way to the other side of town or all the way, an hour and 15 minutes from their own community because some well-intentioned white liberals thought that was better for them. There's a whole bunch of study on this that you can look at. It's just not as clear as sending somebody to a school district an hour and a half away is better for them if that's a better school when some people didn't want to go that far. I mean, I'm somebody who doesn't want to commute at all for work if I can avoid it, right? I mean, I've had to commute before. I've had up to about a 30 or 40-minute commute, depending on the period of my life each way. But I hate commuting. I can't imagine commuting 40 minutes to get to school every day if you could avoid it. Anyway, but she went after Biden and said that he was a racist, and now she's saying this about Joe Biden. Play 15.
We have a president who has failed to embrace the truth, to embrace science, to speak the truth, and to elevate the American people. And that's why I'm so proud to be in this meeting, sponsored and organized by Joe Biden, who is completely the opposite, who is someone who speaks truth, who embraces fact. It knows how to speak truth, even when it is difficult for us to hear, but he's a true leader in that way. And he is the kind of person who not only has the skills and the experience to lift up the circumstance of the American people during a crisis, but also to lift up our spirits.
Wow. He's an amazing guy when he remembers where he is. He's done an incredible job when he's not dropping out of a presidential race for plagiarism or getting less than 1% of the vote, or when he's not, being the partisan hack that we've all seen for decades, who's been wrong consistently on every foreign policy issue. And it's he's just unimpressive. And I feel like there's nothing about this guy that should make anyone say, yeah, and they've known this all along, but they just don't have anyone else that they're comfortable with. I mean, they weren't willing. Ultimately, the left was not willing to take the plunge with Bernie Sanders. They were not willing to do it. I'm going to say the left. I should say the Democratic Party. The left wanted to do it, of the Democratic Party. But overall, the people, the left of center apparatus from centrist establishment DNC all the way to, crazy socialist Young Turk lunatics, they weren't willing to, they weren't able to come to a consensus that Bernie Sanders was a realistic option for them if they really wanted to win the presidency. I wish that Bernie Sanders had won the primary, because I really wanted to see a Bernie versus Trump election. And given the trajectory of this country right now, with the amount of spending we're doing, the amount of government intervention, I think a Bernie-Trump election would be fascinating on a whole bunch of levels. But we're not going to get that. Instead, we have the ultimate insider, other than Hillary and Obama, but he's probably third place insider for the Democrats right now, who's been in this game for so long, and no one has ever said, wow, we're so much better off because of Joe Biden. But you're going to be told to forget all that, because now he's amazing. Now he's going to do a great job. Nope, that's not true. Oh, and he's also making far left promises to try to get the Bernie Sanders base to come out for him. Play 7.
With regard to immigration, you said that you would suspend or place a moratorium on deportations for the first 100 days for anyone in the country illegally. Do you still hold to that, and why do you believe that's a good idea?
Because we have to straighten things out. Anyone who committed a felony in the meantime would be deported. But we have to take time to take stock of exactly what's going on, who's where, what the truth is, and what's going on at the border. And that's the thing we should be doing now. Because the idea, Jim, you've never seen a time when someone seeking asylum has to seek it from another country. You've never seen a circumstance where we have put people in cages. We have to take stock of where we are. We are a nation of immigrants. And one of the reasons why we are so powerful and we've been so successful is because we're a nation of immigrants. And the way we're acting, both domestically and internationally, is a crying shame. It's not who we are. So let's take stock.
I mean, just a lot of dumb slogans and talking points. Doesn't really mean anything. The people that have been coming to the border, I mean, the ones that we're really referring to here that were using loopholes in immigration law to pretend that they were asylum seekers. They're not asylum seekers. Those like me who went down to the border, who did the research, who spoke to Border Patrol, who looked at the numbers, and all along were saying, these are not asylum seekers, folks. Guess what? We were right. They are not. They were coached. They were paying the cartels to do what was effectively human smuggling through the back door of U.S. immigration policy. And what they were doing was illegal. They were illegally crossing, and then they were illegally remaining. Yes, they can claim asylum, but they end up doing 2 illegal immigration acts, and their status is illegal once they stay beyond their court date and don't show up. But the Democrats act like we haven't learned all of this. We haven't seen all this. I mean, for Joe Biden, it's just a question of what he can say to stupid libs who will believe whatever he says because he's not Trump. So that's a nice special power that he has, that he can just say anything, and as long as he's not Trump, they'll give him more than the benefit of the doubt. But Joe Biden is, it really, Tucker said it so well that one time. He needs to be sitting on a bench with a blanket over his knees, feeding ducks. He is not the leader of the free world. He should not be the leader of the free world. And it's really reckless and stunning in its own way that Democrats are still playing this game where they're putting this guy forward, and this is who's supposed to be leading the country. I mean, they've got to be kidding, but they're not kidding. You can put this one in the even conservative justices on the Supreme Court cannot be relied on. So there's a case here of, and I know this one pretty well because it deals with New York City gun laws, and they've just, the Supreme Court punted on this one. They decided they weren't going to take this up. This is the first time in a decade that the court would have looked at Second Amendment issues. And here's what New York was saying. New York was saying that, you couldn't really you could only transport your firearm from home to a range. And then people came up with, well, hold on a second. What if I'm transporting it from one home to another home? What if I'm transporting it from the home to a range, but I stop and I have a sandwich? And this was really the argument. This actually came up in court. If I stop to get a cup of coffee with my lawful firearm in the car, and for some reason the police stop me or there's some exchange that involves law enforcement, and I'm getting a coffee and I've got my lawfully owned, locked in a lockbox with a trigger guard on it, because you got to have both those things in New York, and separate ammunition also locked in my car, am I technically in violation? Am I a criminal now? Should I be arrested? You know what New York City's answer was? We're not sure. They didn't know. Under the law that they had, they weren't really sure. So the Chief Justice joined the 4 liberals here. John Roberts, can't trust him. We knew this from Obamacare. Can't trust him. Another bad judge pick from the Bush administration. And we were all told, that the court is so far right. It's just not true. And he saved them on Obamacare by pretending that language isn't really the language, that words don't have meaning. And now here he is again. The at issue quote, this is from the Wall Street Journal, is a New York City rule that prevents residents with gun licenses from transporting their guns from their city homes to shooting ranges and homes outside the city. So you couldn't leave the city of New York with your gun to go to a New York State gun range. How does that make any sense? It's a city only, but there are no ranges here, really. I think there's 1 or 2 in the whole city, and they're dumps. So you go through the process, which was a $431 fee for a premises permit, which means you can just keep it at home. Can't carry it. No open or concealed carry. You have to go through a police investigation involving your mental health, criminal history, and moral character. It can take up to 6 months to get it. And even then, I could not, as a New York City resident, take my gun to a range upstate and go actually shoot and enjoy myself. Weren't allowed. And that's when it also came up with, what if I stopped on the way to that range? Because then they said, well, we've passed. They changed the law here. So what the New York State legislature did is they changed the law so that, okay, fine, you can do this now. They passed a law saying that you can go directly between residences and other destinations. But folks, this is just absurd. So they make this little change to it, and in the argument over this, Justice Alito, what happened is the court says that it's now moot because they changed the law, but the court should have weighed in and said, no, if you legally own your firearm within that legal jurisdiction, you should be able to move it from one residence to another. It can't be locked down just at the one place that you consider your home. That's absurd. And it can't be locked down just within a city if it's a state law. How would that make any sense? And they said, imagine, for example, if you required, and this was brilliant from Justice Alito, a state law enacting that any woman who wishes to obtain an abortion must submit certification from 5 doctors that the procedure is medically necessary. And then they bring a challenge in court and they say, okay, sorry, we'll make it only 4 doctors. Do you think the Supreme Court would say that's not an issue anymore? Of course not. But they did here because Roberts is a wimp who cares more about the court than the Constitution, as we all know, and doesn't want mean things written about him in the New York Times editorial page. So the Second Amendment did not get a clarification. The Constitution did not get a win. And your right to bear arms is still up in the air, unfortunately, because you can't trust conservatives on the court, my friends. You can always trust the libs to be libs, though. It is roll call time, everyone. Thank you very much for staying through to this part. It's one of the more relaxed and enjoyable sessions that we have here on the Buck Sexton Show. We also get to ask producer Mark, how far into the Michael Jordan series on ESPN are you right now?
I watched all 4 episodes.
Is it 4? Is the whole thing 4?
No, it's a 10-part series, but they're doing 2 every Sunday night.
Yeah. I've watched the first 2 with Snow Princess, and it's great.
I know.
It's amazing. And I actually, brings me back, Mark, to when I did watch a lot of basketball and grew up as a huge, I was a Knicks fan, but you always had to love, I always felt differently about the Patriots, where I feel like the Patriots were the bad guys somehow, even though,
yes.
The Patriots are the bad guys. And because as a Giants fan, that's what you think. But with the Bulls, it was kind of like you can't hate that. Like, they were so good and they were such a brand that, I didn't like the Lakers later on when they had Kobe and Shaq, because with Shaq, it always felt like you were cheating because the guy was so big and so strong and just dunked all the time. And it was like, what is this? Kobe was amazing, but, R.I.P. But Shaq was never a fun player to watch, I thought.
I think he was at times. Just to see such a dominant paint presence, you've never seen anything like Shaq before.
No, and I think there's never really been a similar level of certainly big man dominance like that. And as you've been telling me, It's just changed so much now. It was when I was growing up, I remember if you were a 7-footer, the expectation was that you basically couldn't dribble, you really couldn't shoot, and like maybe you had some kind of an in the paint, baby sky hook or something like that. There was some move that you had, but really you were there to like block shots, rebound, and just be a big presence. And now they've got guys who have point guard skills who are 6'11", and it's like normal.
Yeah, I mean, and Scottie Pippen kind of started that as we go back to the Bulls. I mean, he was the first point forward where he grew up as a point guard and then shot up to become 6'7", 6'8", but he still had the point guard skills.
Yeah, what's
so Pippen
amazing
started
in this ESPN documentary, which I'm watching 2 great things lately, actually 3 great things, so I can recommend all of these. I've been meaning to bring this up. The Crown is, I don't know if you'll like it, Producer Mark. It's a little too much like, hey, who's having tea? Is Producer Mark having tea? I don't know if
my
you're
cup
like
of tea.
It's not your cup of tea. But I think for a lot of the folks at home, the set design is, it's amazingly well done for what it is. And if you like Churchill stuff, there's a lot of Winston Churchill. Although it's played by an American, which I think is so interesting. And then you have as I said, the ESPN series which is really good. It's just very well done, and it brings you back to, God, I think the 90s was like the best time in human history. Late 90s was an amazing period. And then you also have the Waco series. Have you seen that?
I saw you tweeting about it. I'm interested.
Really good. Really, really good. Highly recommend the Waco series so far. Taylor Kitsch, who plays Tim Riggins in Friday Night Lights, which is a TV show that I really enjoyed back in the day. He's the lead guy. He's David Koresh. He's phenomenal in the role. And I don't usually think of Taylor Kitsch as a great actor, but he's really good in it. And it's just it's a good movie, and it pulls no punches about the federal government and given what we're finding out right now about the whole Russia collusion thing and how just corrupt and gross the FBI and DOJ were at the very top level. You go back and see what happened. I mean, I'm not even that far into it right now, but see what happened at Ruby Ridge in Idaho, and then also at Waco after that, and what the ATF-E, now it's E, it used to be ATF, what they were up to. I think you'll actually really like it, man. It's a really good show. Do you remember that you're really young, so you weren't even, I don't know, you were probably like an amoeba when this thing happened, but.
Yeah, it'll just be a news show to me.
Yeah, a little bit of a news, but it's very well done. I do recommend it. And I will say that The Crown, man, when you're all snuggled up on a rainy Saturday night under quarantine and you can watch like 3 or 4 episodes of The Crown, it's good, man.
It makes you feel bougie like the rest of your life.
It feels super bougie watching The Crown. You sit there, you drink only the finest tea. Only the finest teas and crumpets. So,
do you actually make crumpets? Do they have gluten-free crumpets?
Could we make crumpets? Crumpets wouldn't be that. We could make crumpets.
What is a crumpet? I don't even know.
It's not to be confused with a strumpet. Very different.
Of course.
A crumpet is, just for the important safety tip out there, a crumpet is like a scone, kind of, right? Isn't it? Yeah. A crumpet's it's like a baked good.
Okay.
All right, roll call. We're gonna save ourselves here with roll call. It's roll call time. Doug is first up. Buck is back. Back again. I love the opener of Friday's show. The pragmatic, clear-eyed Buck slayed the virus propaganda hypocrisy. Thank you so much, Doug. P.S. I just added BuckSexton.com to my favorites bar. Well, that is awesome. Please keep tuning in. Please, go to BuckSexton.com as much as you can. That's what we're going to be pushing folks to be doing. Matthew, we got stories going up there. We got all kinds of fun things. We're going to have, we have lots of fun ideas and plans that are going to be going there. Matthew, hey, Buck, I've been enjoying your perspective and program from Longmont, Colorado, just north of Boulder on 760 AM. Freedom, 93.7. Thank you, and keep up representing our conservative voice. Hey, man, I love Team Buck Colorado is just going so very strong, and it's been amazing to see how well this show has been going over there because we've only been on air there for, I think, about 6 months, maybe 9 months now. And we are the #1 talk show in our time slot in the Denver area, which there's a lot of different radio shows going on there, talk radio shows. So we are beating everybody else in our time slot in Denver right now in the ratings. So, yeah, thank you, Denver. You guys rock. And also Longmont, Colorado, north of Boulder, 760 AM. Thank you so much. Leonard, Hey, Buck, it looks to me like the people protesting going back to work are being organized by the Democrats. They're making more money on unemployment now than they were when they were working. Well, Leonard, I haven't seen that yet. But I do know that there are people that work in the restaurant industry who don't want to go back right now because, and look, it's understandable. The financial incentive to stay home is stronger than going to work. Now, this was known before they passed that bill. This was known, but they didn't want to scale back. They didn't want to change the bill. They just wanted to allow it to proceed as it was. So, you know, there was definitely something going on there. Well, the Democrats, I think, wanted to create a greater degree of dependency and wanted to push people even further into the government's arms than they already are right now. And that was a mechanism for doing so. Once you make sure that there's more money in not working than working, guess what? People will make rational decisions. And they did. Let's see here. Kendra, hey, Buck, I'm starting to think we are all essential workers. What do you think? No offense to those who have been out there since day one, but this economy needs all of us. Kendra, I take your point, and I think everyone's job to them is essential, and it felt a little callous when you had all these different politicians coming out and saying that certain people were essential and others were not, and especially when you see the way that has worked in the retail sector where, you know, if you sell... you can sell certain things in the stores but not sell other things. Well, that affects the producers of those products. If you're already in Walmart, why can't you buy seeds, for example? I mean, some of the restrictions they've had in place have just been absurd. But, you know, there's also an interesting, I've been reading this, and I think it's a pretty esteemed professor at Yale Law School who is writing that there may, in fact, be legitimate legal challenge to some of these state designations of non-essential workers, because this is not a temporary closure. This isn't like 2 days when there's a hurricane or 2 days when there's a tornado or something. This is an indefinite shutdown of businesses on order of the state, which legally could qualify as under the takings clause, right? That this could be considered an illegal taking of private property by the government, and without any rationale or specific justification about why some businesses were closed and others were not, that satisfies a court, there may be legal actions that can be taken here. I'll try to find that. I read that piece this morning. I thought it was interesting. I'm not sure that the author is right, but it's certainly a worthy thought exercise. He's a very smart guy. You can tell as a professor at Yale Law School. So, and by the way, being a professor at Yale Law School doesn't make you smart, but this guy who happens to be a professor at Yale Law School does strike me as very, very intelligent. The way he makes the argument, the way he walks through the process. Sarah. Hey, Buck, appreciate the show. Sarah, the show appreciates you. On mail-in ballots, Washington State has had mail-in only voting for a decade or more. I hate it. It's convenient, but that's the only upside. I have zero confidence in the validity of the process. Every time there's been a need for a recount, carloads of missing, uncounted ballots magically appear. And without fail, they are Democrat votes. I'm sure there's a surface-level method of accountability, but Olympia is beyond corrupt. Well, Sarah, I'm sure that's true. I don't know. Washington State's not a state I know that well. I've never been to Washington State. I've been to your little cousin to the south, Oregon, and spent some time in Portland, which, as we know, is the heartland of Antifa, and also out at Cannon Beach in Oregon, which I got to say was beautiful. I really like that place a lot. But yeah, I think that the mail-in voting process is it's an invitation for shenanigans and for fraud and for a lack of confidence in the process. I think it's also important that people should show up. There should be this active participant component of your citizenship where if you're going to go and vote, you actually have to go and vote. Unless you have a really good reason not to, right? I mean, U.S. military, if you've got mail-in, if you've got to take absentee ballots, we understand that there are some reasons. But in general, and look, the chances of being exposed to the virus, if you show up and you have social distancing in lines, it seems to me by November will be pretty small. But look, this is also going to be a decision that's not really made until we know what we're facing in the fall. Once we know what we're facing with this virus, then we'll have a much better sense of whether or not there's a need to even worry about COVID-19 at that point. Aaron. Hey, Buck. The Waco show on Netflix, which we were just talking about, has really upset my wife because she didn't know much of anything about it and only knew the basic facts. It has driven me into a real internal conflict of what to believe and wondered if you were experiencing any of this yourself. I would like to find more books and resources strictly dealing in facts and wondered if you have or plan on doing the same. Please send some ideas my way because it is getting harder and harder to figure out who and what to believe. Well, Aaron, I'm only 2 episodes into it, and I've got this is what I've been watching by myself when the Snow Princess is not around to keep me company, and it's just me and Tallulah. And Tallulah, the Frenchie, does not weigh in on my Netflix choices. So she is quiet, but Snow Princess, as a fellow human being, does have opinions on the show. So we do a slightly different. What I'm just saying, we do a slightly different approach there. With we balance our desires for what to watch. But the Waco show, I'm 2 episodes into it, and it is very good. I haven't gotten to the point yet where we see how bad things really go. And I'll tell you this. I kind of remember Waco because I remember there was also an HBO series done on it many years ago. I remember Waco in the news, but I was so young. I mean, it was 93. I was 12 years old. I was so young that I don't really have any recollection of it in a way where I would understand anything from the time. And I want to go back and read more about it. So I'm with you, Aaron. I can't really guide you on this one because I don't know more than you on this one. I'm still trying to figure out. Well, I'm still watching the show, and I mean I have a feeling the ATF is going to look really bad, which doesn't surprise me. And I also would note, they're clearly setting it up for an internal conflict within the FBI too. But we gotta figure this one out. We'll see. I'll come back to you when I have more on that one. Andrew, Shields High, Buckster. I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the city council decreed today that they're going to fine me $300 if they catch me on the street without a mask. Wow, that's nuts. I've heard you say many times that the Chi-Com flu is hard to transmit unless someone contagious coughs in your face, but I need your source for that because it runs counter to everything the hysteriocracy is trying to ram down my throat. I'm in Boston. You're in New York City. You're much younger than me, but it's time to let us build out the herd immunity. The nation depends on it. You and Mark keep up the good work. Andrew, thanks so much, man. I mean, I don't really have a source for it other than there's no source to support wearing masks in public in open air as necessary or helpful for the preventing the spread of this disease. There's a very large study that came out of China looking at transmissions there, and almost none of the transmissions were even attributed to being outside. This is a disease that spreads indoors, and it spreads indoors best in environments where there's not a lot of sunlight, not a lot of fresh air, not a lot of heat. So we already know that, and we're heading into summer, and I'm sure it gets very warm in Cambridge, Massachusetts in June and July, and that people are going to think they have to walk around with masks on is just absurd. It's just absurd. Now, look, if you're 76 years old and you have you have serious heart problems or you have type 2 diabetes, would you maybe want to take an extra precaution when you're outside of having some kind of a covering on your face? Maybe. But remember, the covering on the face is mostly to prevent you from giving it to other people. It's not really to protect you from those people. So it's like if everyone takes the step of protecting the other people, then we're supposed to be in a much better position with this. But it is not the case that if you have a basic surgical mask on, you are considered to be, well protected against this disease. It might give some degree of protection. They're not really sure. Keep in mind, if it's aerosolized droplets, which may in fact play a larger role than anticipated in transmission, if that's the case, then guess what? That could get in your eyes. So it's not even just your nose and mouth that you have to be concerned about. There are other possibilities there as well. Todd writes, "Hello, Buck. I just want to send you a note saying last week's shows were all top-notch. However, the highlight, without a doubt, was your conversation with Uncle Ted. Flippin' freaking fantastic. I was so shocked to hear him on your show because he's not your normal type of guest. I absolutely loved hearing your conversation with him. On Saturday, I listened to your full podcast interview with him and will listen to it again. He talks so fast and is so spot on that my brain was overloaded with his truths and logical analysis of life today. God bless you, and God bless the USA. P.S. Producer Mark, thank you for recommending the Last Dance documentary. I watched 2 episodes last night, and I loved it. Producer Mark, what would you like to say?
You're welcome. I'm always here for your sports recommendations.
There you go. That's right. Yeah, you guys direct all your sports inquiries. You can just put, for producer Mark dash and then put in whatever your sports question is. Otherwise, I'm going to tell you about all the touchdowns that I scored on the hockey field, and you don't need that. You don't need that right now.
Oy vey.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Fantastic show today. Go to bucksexton.com if you have not already. Please bookmark it. Check in as you can. It's a great way for the team to see what's going on and keep in touch. Tell somebody to download the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It's a great way to do it. Mark and I will be back tomorrow. Same time, same place. Shields high.